Welcome to the Arizona Commission for the Deaf and the Hard of Hearing special board meeting. Today's date is June 26th, 2025, and we will call the meeting to order at 4:04 p.m. Kyla, can you start us off with a roll call?
Sure.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bolmarsich,
Here.
Commissioner Herron,
Here.
Commissioner Kidd,
Here.
Commissioner Cinco,
Here.
and Commissioner Swenson.
Here.
Also present is our AG Elise Phelan,
Here.
Michelle Kunzman,
Here.
ADOA staff, George McNeely,
Here.
and Brian Westerberg.
Here.
And then ACDHH staff, we've got Ricky Gonsowski,
Here.
Sherry Berta,
Here.
and then myself, Kyla Daltonova. I think that's it.
Great. Thank you so much for the roll call, Kyla. We will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the approval of the meeting minutes from our June. Oh no, Kyla, I think there may be a typo on the agenda. It says June 94th, 2025.
Okay, so clearly there's no 94 days in June. I'm sorry, that is June 9th. Yes, I will change that. Thanks.
All right, thank you. That took me a second. I was wondering, was it June 4th? Was it June 9th? I couldn't quite recall. So we're looking for the approval of the meeting minutes from the meeting on June 9th. And I will entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
This is Randall Kidd. I move to approve the minutes from June 94th, 2025. I mean, June 9th, 2025.
We have a motion to approve those meeting minutes from June 94th or June 9th. Do we have a second? We have a second from Commissioner Bolmarsich. Looks like majority of individuals are in favor. I'm seeing no one opposed or abstaining. So that motion passes. The next item on our agenda is the Executive Director job post. I would like to open things up for discussion. I would love to have one of our great folks from ADOA talk a little bit about the job post, give us a brief explanation of the process and take it from there.
Hi, this is Brian Westerberg. Yeah, I mean, we have, which was included, which was in the meeting notes, was a copy of the first go around we had posting, which we would probably be very similar to that. So it'd be, it can be the exact same thing, but obviously you can go through that, see if you need to make revisions. That would be going to make revisions to the PD, which was also attached. So we want to get the position description approved, and so that everybody agrees on what we're actually recruiting for, right? And then we would adjust the posting to that, if that's helpful.
Yes, that is helpful. And I will look to the commissioners to see if you have any questions.
Commissioner Kidd here. In the selective preferences, it specifically says fluent in American Sign Language. Is it possible to move that up to one of the requirements? I feel selective preferences leaves it too open. I feel it should be a requirement. So I'm not sure how that can fit into our PD. Can we move it to one of those KSA instead of selected preferences?
But you would put it in you'd want it in the required section, like where you have the bachelor's degree. That's what you're saying, or you want it in the KSAs? That's what you guys would vote on. You would come back to everyone looking at that PD and then making a decision what we want. I'll take it back to the class and comp person to approve it.
Excuse
Okay.
Go
me,
ahead.
Chair Senko, if I look at the PD, it is in the requirement for education, licensure, and certification to be as fluent in ASL.
Yeah, I'm looking at that right now.
So we could
Give me,
make that change.
give me just one moment. My Google Chrome browser just crashed.
No problem.
Okay, yes, it is mentioned in the KSAs.
Yep.
Mhm.
No, it's actually mentioned in the required education, licensure, and certification section of the PD.
Okay. Okay.
So we could move that.
Now I do have a question. Okay. Sorry about that. I thought you had completed your sentence. I apologize for interrupting. Now, Commissioner Kidd, if I'm not mistaken, I seem to recall that there's an Arizona statute requiring the ACDHH executive director, and I can't remember the exact phrasing from it, but I believe it's something saying that the person who will take the lead as the executive director has to meet one of these three requirements. They have to be a deaf person, they have to be a hard of hearing person, or they need to be a hearing person with the requirement that anyone in any of those three categories signs. That was my understanding, if I'm not mistaken.
I can just jump in. This is Elise, the AAG. So that statute
Yes.
is ARS section 36-1943. And subsection B, I'll just read the section. So the executive director shall be a trained professional, experienced in problems of the deaf and the hard of hearing, and skilled in the use of manual communication, commonly referred to as sign language, and may be either a deaf person, a person who is hard of hearing, or a person with normal hearing. So the statute says skilled in the use of manual communication. So I don't know if that means that you could require fluency, but I'll leave that to ADOA, who probably has a better understanding of how to interpret that, but just so we have the statute that's being referenced on the record. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Elise. Who was from ADOA was going to comment on that? I also want to recognize that Commissioner Herron has a question as well.
George, you're muted. I cannot hear you.
Yeah, you're
Sorry.
muted, George.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Chair Senko. In the PD, it states on the requirement for ASL. On the posting, it does not. As of right now, that's been evaluated from ADOA as appropriate in the requirement, but I will go back and double check that from the last time it was certified, which was, I believe, last year. I believe it was updated at that.
TEMA, yes.
Yeah. So August of 24 is when it was last reviewed. So I believe it's accurate.
Yeah, and that's what I'm looking at currently is the job description. And that's where ASL is not specifically included in the KSA. So I'd like to see it in that section. just to make sure it's a part of the knowledge, skills, and assessment section. So I just want to ensure that that will happen. Thank you.
Okay, now we will go to Commissioner Herron. We appreciate your patience. You have the floor.
No problem. This is Commissioner Herron. That's why we're having this meeting, right? To have all of these discussions. Now, I do have one point of clarification. So we're talking about an ASL requirement for that specific position. What if we had a hard of hearing person who doesn't have fluency or skills in American Sign Language? Then what would we do in that situation? Or does that statute clearly state that no matter if they're deaf, hard of hearing, or hearing, that they must use sign language?
That's a good question. And I do want everyone to know that I see that Commissioner Bolmarsich has her hand up. And this might be a good time to get a hard of hearing perspective as well before we go any further in our discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Commissioner Bomarsich. So the person Commissioner Herron has just described as a possible applicant would essentially be me. I am hard of hearing, but not fluent or skilled at sign language at all. I don't feel, I basically would have no objection to someone like me being excluded from that, because if you can't communicate with one of the major populations you serve, then what would be the point of the job? That's just my take. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Herron, did you have something else?
Commissioner Bolmarsich, I do appreciate that. This is Commissioner Herron. Thank you for clarifying. I just wanted to make sure that we all have the same understanding before we proceed. I don't want to get stuck with that ASL requirement as something that might be a barrier. So thank you for that. I also wanted to make sure that we finish that discussion before we start a new topic.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Commissioner Herron. I appreciate it. Michelle, do you have a comment?
Well, I just wanted to put some clarity around the statute that Elise had referred to, and just make sure that there's clarity about the expectations of hiring someone who is skilled in the use of manual communication, commonly referred to as sign language, is a requirement under the statute. What's not required under the statute is that the person is either deaf, a person who is hard of hearing, or a person with normal hearing. That can't be a requirement. So, but if the person is a deaf person, a person who is hard of hearing, or a person with normal hearing, regardless, that person should be able to communicate in the manual communication of sign language.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that, Michelle. George, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Senko. For my information, how would a candidate be evaluated for their skill of ASL? For example, if we selected a prime candidate and we wanted to move forward, does the commission want that candidate tested for their skill set, or is it discovered during the interview process, the competency? And I'm relying on you as the experts.
That is an excellent question. I have some thoughts, but I will let the other commissioners speak to make sure that we're all coming here with the same understanding. We'll go to Commissioner Herron, Commissioner Kidd, and then I'll add some comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it is important the important thing is be able to carry on a conversation, an interactive conversation without struggling to have a significant conversation. I think that is the key that we're looking for. I have seen folks who passed a their sign language classes, but they cannot carry on a conversation. So during the interview process, an expectation would be that the interpreters at some point do not turn their voices off, do not voice for that piece, and the candidate would be able to express their proficiency in sign language during that interview and not have trouble doing that piece of the interview and would be able to pass that sort of evaluation. If they can use a sign language interpreter without speaking, then that would be a good way to evaluate their proficiency in the language.
Thank you, Commissioner Herron. We'll go to Commissioner Kidd now.
Yes, that it was one of my next questions for further along in the agenda, but I do have a spreadsheet here from ADOA, and it does list the process, the kind of the timeline. And I do see where it says, I think it's step 9, it says a phone screening. So I do have a question regarding that. How will the recruiter be able to evaluate that? Or will we be able to do that type of phone screening? Will we get a report after that? And then it goes on to the background check, it goes on to other things, and then the sit down interview comes, and then we may find that that person doesn't qualify at that point. And, it would be better to evaluate the skills early on before we move down the process. I know it's ahead in our agenda, but I just wanted to put that out there for food for thought.
Thank you, Commissioner Kidd. Commissioner Herron, you both brought up excellent points. I just want to make sure that we're sticking to our agenda. Sorry, my browser is okay. Now, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole on the process because the process is not on tonight's agenda, but I do want to recognize the value of screening for ASL proficiency. And George, thanks for bringing this up. I will say, based on my experience, as you know, I'm a representative on the board of the Department of Economic Security. What I'm saying doesn't reflect the opinions of DES. I'm just talking about me and my role. Now, when candidates are hired for certain positions, especially where the position will be one where someone is working closely with the deaf and hard of hearing population, HR will send a personal inventory to the individual. And we also do the ASL proficiency exam, which is an evaluation of sign language proficiency, where the goal is to get a score of at least 3 or above. And ADOA uses that ASL proficiency exam or interview. That is one way to approach it. But I think tonight, especially while we're on this agenda item, it's important to talk about the job posting. The process is not necessarily on the agenda, but this is something that's good to keep in mind for a future agenda item. If that makes sense. Okay. Commissioner Herron?
So the ASLPI assessment screening tool for a deaf individual who signs That might seem offensive, and it is a bit sticky. If an interpreter is required, if they're using an interpreter, that would be a requirement to show their proficiency. But to have an executive director, even some deaf individuals don't sign in the manner that is rated by a formal tool like that, but they can still carry on a fluent conversation. So I feel a little bit iffy about the ASLPI part. I would encourage us to consider using a screening of some sort, doing a pre-screening. My previous job, one of the jobs I had, there was no way of knowing if that person was proficient or not. So I would do a pre-screening, I would do a pre-interview, have a conversation in sign language, meet them, and then we would be able to move to the first round of interviews after that pre-screening. That kind of thing I think would be safe for us.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Herron. As a fluent and native user of sign language, I absolutely get where you're coming from. I do want to remind everyone that the process for the hiring and screening of applicants is not on tonight's agenda. We're looking at the job posting, the position description, and how we want to screen someone for their sign language skills. Is kind of one of tomorrow's problems. So we'll tackle that at our next meeting. We can talk about that process and clearly delineate what it will look like. To be respectful of everyone's time, I do want to say that this is a good discussion, but it's also just something important to keep in mind, something to mull over before our next meeting.
We should add it then to our agenda for the next time so that we can be prepared to go into more depth on that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Commissioner Kidd?
This is Commissioner Kidd. So is this discussion more of what maybe on the agenda item number 4, I believe, possibly?
That would be
On the... Oh, no,
number
I'm
4
sorry,
is the
number
position description.
5. Should we hold that discussion about ASLPI and all of that? That's what I'm thinking, because we're thinking maybe the next meeting, but we might be able to get to it tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, any further questions or thoughts? Commissioner Herron?
Thank you, Madam Chair. New topic, still related to the job posting terminology, or the phrasing in the job posting. I wanted to speak on the duties and the KSAs, how we are wording the things in that description for the posting announcement. I feel the way that it is written currently, it isn't really going to recruit the right type of candidate that we're looking for. I would like to see more robust description of we want to make sure that we get the right candidate, and I don't feel that what is there is really saying anything specific to what we're looking for. It doesn't indicate to the candidate what our expectations or standards are for the job. So for example, in the skill set section, we have the word leadership, which is an incredibly broad term, a very broad concept. Everyone is a leader in their own way, so to speak. So if that person that we're looking for, the candidate that we're looking for, we're talking about a person who is in a leadership position, who is managing a team, who is leading things in the community, who is managing the facilities that we have. So I have they need to have experience with strategic leadership, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that we should be a bit more precise in the terminology we're using so that we can ensure that we are recruiting from the appropriately narrow pool of possible candidates. We want to make sure that we're detailing what we're exactly looking for. So that would be I put some proposed language there, but I think that might help us to narrow down to exactly the type of candidates we're looking for. That's something I wanted to revisit in the job description.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Herron. Now, George and Brian, I just want to recognize Commissioner Bolmarsich. I see that you have your hand up. Hold that thought, George and Brian. We'll go to Commissioner Bolmarsich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Commissioner Bomarsich. Like Commissioner Herron, I have concerns about the skills section, mainly because, well, leadership was one of the concerns. But basically, after the first bullet point, it's not really saying what these skills will be used for. Like, what are you using management and organization for? What's the public speaking for? I would really prefer to see these. These are basically these are basically talents without application in this section. I think that's also what Commissioner Herron was getting at. So instead of leadership, something like proven experience in XYZ, which is basically the same as leadership. So that's just my thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bolmarsich. So basically what I'm hearing from both Commissioners Herron and Commissioner Bolmarsich, we're going to let our interpreters switch there. Okay, so they feel that the job posting details and language are, what's the word? Kind of generic or generalized. Is that what I'm hearing, Commissioner Bolmarsich?
Yeah, sort of generic. This is Commissioner Bomarsich again. Generic or generalized. And I also forgot to say, I thought there was one glaring omission, which it doesn't mention anything about financial skills. That's the other thing I'd like to see in there, because it does involve balancing the budget.
Good points. I will go to Commissioner Herron, and please try to be brief with your comments so we can go to George after you.
I have bingo. Yes, I have two things. Commissioner Bomarsich was correct. I feel the financial aspect is entirely absent. I did note that. I agree with that.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone. George, thanks for your patience. We'll go to you. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, Chair Senko. So I absolutely agree. Our template on our posting is that it's a generic it helps us with the 90 different agencies we represent. The commission determines what's best reflected in that posting to find the candidate they want. I might suggest expanding on the job summary to really kind of set that narrative. And then those bullet points, you could edit as possible. But if you look at that posting, there's an opportunity in that job summary to edit that and add to that. And that might be a good place to craft that message of what you're looking for. Thank you.
Yes, Brian?
No, I would just concur with George, and that's what he's talking about with that postings we base that all off what we call the PD, which is, or PDQ, position description, which is a job description, which is the other, the one that says PD update SDF, a bunch of zeros and then a 1. That's where he's saying, like, let's get that job summary with those. the details and information that you want in there, and then we'll build that posting out based off of the new and improved PD/job description. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Kidd?
I just wanted to clarify. So what you're saying is we could give you our input to add to the position description. Are we doing that through this meeting today, or how are we providing you with our input for that?
And give the interpreter a moment to finish. Thank you. Commissioner Kidd, you brought up a very valid point because we want to make sure that we are abiding to open meeting law and we're being transparent with our public. Yes, hi, Elise.
That's a great question. Obviously these meetings are limited. I don't know if Michelle wants to jump in. I know she has some experience as well, but think that as long as no decisions are being made or major discussions being had, especially anything that's important to the public interest should always be in the open meeting, but I understand that our time is limited and ADOA's time is also limited for coming to all of these. So suppose, it would be, I'm happy to review the decision and make sure that it is open meeting, compliant. But with respect to ADOA and to the time that we have for these, I think as long as, there's no substantive discussion between the commission members and no decisions are being made, I think submitting to ADOA, seeing however they do that, and then having the actual discussions in open meeting. I don't want to go too much further into anything that would be considered legal advice, obviously, but just somewhere to start that I would be happy to review. Again, I don't know if ADOA has experience or if Michelle has similar experience, but again, I could, whatever decision for that you guys come to, I could review for compliance.
Great. Thank you, Elise. Michelle, did you want to add anything to what Elise had to say?
Yeah, I agree with what Elise has said, and I think perhaps that I'm going to defer to ADOA in terms of their process and time frame and kind of what their experience is in these situations. But just as an idea, I don't think that it would be inappropriate for members to, on their own, provide ADOA with suggestions directly about word choices, things that they think that might make sense, and then bring that as a full discussion back to the committee as a whole so that we can have it in an open session. That way, ADOA has ideas from each of you that they can incorporate into a draft, and then you can have a discussion in open session. Just an idea.
Thank you. George, Brian, any thoughts?
Yes, thank you, Chair Senko. I think that's a great idea. We can accept the verbiage. We can draft that job summary or those additions to the PD or the posting, and then bring that ready to discuss, distribute at the time of the meeting and go forward with that.
I think that would be appropriate.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Herron?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I sent my list of suggestions. I don't expect everything to be precise, but it was a starting point, a way to help us work on these revisions. And I've tried to make it more specific to the deaf position, or how we work with deaf consumers. Because the hard of hearing consumers, same with deaf blind consumers as well, rather, same with hard of hearing and deaf blind, because there are particulars with how to work with those communities and how we will represent those communities. The executive director will be representing them, and that is critical, because that would eliminate a lot of the candidates who think they have a proficiency that they don't actually have in working with deaf or hard of hearing or deaf blind individuals. So that would help with the screening process. I have already sent my 2 cents of what I think should be considered. So I don't know if I send that to you, George, if you should take that and review it for yourself.
Go ahead, Brian.
I might suggest that they get emailed to Chair Sanko, and then she can email George and I, and then we can go through that and make those adjustments. That would be probably the easiest way, is everyone funnels in through Chair Sanko, then they come down to George and I. That's just my productivity suggestion.
Yeah, thank you. And I did receive the email from Commissioner Herron, which was very well written. Now, before I will respond, I want to mention that I've already looked to our AAGs for guidance, and it was mentioned that this can be discussed during open session. Is it okay to share what Commissioner Herron sent to me? I can share it with you, George and Brian. I am curious, though, because Commissioner Herron has already shared information with other board members, we could just see if they're in agreement, and if they are, then we could just pass everything to you. Excuse me, let me clarify. Because Commissioner Herron has already shared this information with me, and I've shared it with the AAGs, I do feel like it's appropriate to share with the other board members what Commissioner Herron has already drafted and proposed.
I would
Does that make sense?
I would agree with that. You can, yeah, you can and even should discuss it in open session, since it's already created and out there, but also, of course, send it on to sorry, having a brain melt, to Jordan and Brian as well.
Elise, it's okay. We can always blame those missing thoughts on a Thursday. Michelle?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you have this time set aside to have discussion, so really, this is the time to sort of flesh out as a group your thoughts relative to the posting and the position description. And then perhaps if people want to provide additional written ideas, it could be sent directly to Brian after this meeting. But I do think it makes sense, since I know that one commissioner has already provided information to offer this group. I think it makes sense to just talk about it and use this as an opportunity to start there.
Agreed. Thank you, Michelle.
This is Commissioner Stanko. So yes, I appreciate that. All right, thank you. So what I could do is I could share my screen so that you can see what Commissioner Herron had written. Does that work for everyone? seems like I'm getting thumbs up, so I'll go ahead and do that. Give me a moment to shut some windows. I have a lot of windows open here, so let me just, I don't want to accidentally share anything I shouldn't be sharing, so give me just a moment to clean this up.
Okay. Commissioner Herron, your email has completely disappeared from my inbox. Can you share your screen?
I do have it up, so let me, no problem.
I
I
can't find mine.
can remove the highlighting and then, because it'll be hard to read on the screen with the highlighting as I have it. So can you give me, I have not shared my screen before or in a long time, so I might need a minute to get my bearings and figure it out.
Do you see the green
Share.
box at the bottom of the screen that says share?
You see that? All right, all
Let's
right.
click on that. And then I will go off camera. That way everyone else has better access to see the interpreter.
Oh, I turned mine off.
Commissioner Herron, can you take the lead on this? I'll turn my camera off during this portion. That way everyone has better access and is able to see you and less distractions on the screen.
No problem. Oops. All right. Let me make it bigger so everyone can see. Okay. I was wondering if it's easier to send it out as an attachment to those folks who are in the meeting and then you all can view it real time as it's going. I think that's what I would do here is focus on the concepts and then you guys we can critify it later. Make sure that it, fits the job or whatever. I didn't have any suggestions for the first 3 sections. The job location, the post date, details, and the summary. As I understand it, some folks wanted to improve the summary. I haven't done that. I didn't make any suggestions for that. I felt that the primary duties was really, it has to do with the management of the agency overall. So we have that ARS 36, 1946, or whatever that gave those specific requirements that should be, that is placed up in there, 1941 rather. And so do we want, do you want me to sign through what it says and then go back and discuss it? Or do we want to just discuss it piece by piece by piece? Or how do you want me to run this? I'm assuming I'm just going to go through paragraph by paragraph or section by section. So the primary duty is leadership and providing leadership and strategies. So that's going to be the expectations that we're going to be working with. That'll be a variety of partnering with a variety of stakeholders. So staff members, board members, setting strategic goals, developing and implementing plans, guiding the agency to its future programming. So I think, for lack of a better word, I was thinking maybe public education and advocacy. So meaning it is their job to educate the public, to describe and educate people about deaf culture, rather, hearing loss, issues pertaining to the variety of considerations in our population. So that includes media, websites, social media, all of those various aspects, and making sure that information is shared and accessible to the various constituent populations, such as deaf, blind, etc., and also acting as a lobbyist for the commission. So maybe we can reword this to make it a little bit more clear and organized, but it's not limited to. So we want to talk about like public speaking, going to different places, providing public events, public relations, so directly working with the governor's office, the legislature, other boards, media, and the general public on different issues related to deafness and hearing loss. Maintaining a strong public relationship with the legislature and the community. Policy implementation and development, carrying out current policies, and proposing needed policy changes, creating new policies, doing advisory work in policy matters, fiscal responsibilities, being sure to prepare the annual statements, submitting financial reports, writing the annual budget, working on the annual budget, rather, maintaining the fiduciary responsibility, signing for all of the
Financial documents.
financial documents. Thank you. So that section with the general job duties, now we're talking about the KSAs, the knowledge, specifically. I was wondering if we needed to add to bullet point number 2 in the original document to include combined vision and hearing loss, CVHL. I did see that phrasing somewhere else, and it seems that we're not consistent throughout this document with what we're calling communities, the deaf, hard of hearing, deaf, blind, or are we saying, or does deaf, hard of hearing, deaf, blind include CVHL? Does that include everyone? Is that like a subset? Or I just think that's not consistent. And so that's when I bolded those things. I just wanted to get clarification. I wanted to draw your attention to those to get clarification, particularly in this case on the CVHL question. And then number 5 on the list, it says laws that affect persons who are deaf, hard of hearing, deaf, blind, CVHL, or combined vision and hearing loss. What is that phrasing there? For the skills section, I would say strong leadership and organizational skills would be in that section, including guiding, motivating staff, conflict resolution, fostering a positive work environment, and achieving organizational objectives. Communication, that is an excellent communication skills, including verbal and written. Social media communication, public speaking type communication. There are various skills to mention, to various manners of communication in order to get the message across. I would also add fluent in American Sign Language and written English. I'm not sure how ADOA would phrase that particular requirement, but I'm open to whatever the appropriate phrasing is. Demonstrating knowledge of laws pertaining to deaf, hard of hearing, and deafblind individuals. Strategic planning, including project management, data analysis, financial management, budget development skills. The ability to maintain a positive, be a positive role model and continue to engage with the public and consumers. Consumers and professional organizations. Public individuals and stakeholders, members of the public and stakeholders, as well as the board. So having the skill set to engage with all of those constituents. Maintaining professional appearance. I saw that language in the original job announcement that said that a person needs to dress nice and smell nice. And I don't know why that was necessary to include. I'm not sure if it was. So I did put maintain a professional appearance, but it does make me, that language makes me uncomfortable. It is a given. We are all expecting everyone to be professional at work and dress professionally and appropriately to a situation. So I do expect a person to smell proper as well. And then have the ability to use good judgment and exercise appropriate decorum and diplomacy and engaging in different situations. The ability to adopt plans or change plans as needed. So that's the document, now open for discussion. Katie, did you want to take it from there, Commissioner Sanko?
Thank you. Why don't you stop sharing your screen?
All right, got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Herron. I really appreciate you taking the time and effort to draft that and to write it all out. Beautiful work. Well done. Before we get any further into this, I just want to mention that I learned something. Kyla mentioned that individuals who are watching the live stream have mentioned that Zoom is voice-based. It's kind of watching for who is speaking. So while Commissioner Herron was signing, individuals on YouTube didn't have access to what she was signing. So I just want to provide a recap for our ASL viewers and our ASL audience. Basically, Commissioner Herron was providing feedback on how we can make the position description a little clearer as far as expectations and some details in the KSAs and other expectations and requirements. Now, for this specific position description, we want to be able to get a broad category or a wide array of individuals who are interested in serving our populations, including those who are deaf, those who are hard of hearing, and those who have a combined vision and hearing loss, and those who are deaf-blind, and also individuals with speech impairments. Everything okay over there, Commissioner Herron?
Having issues with my webcam. The
Welcome
sun
to
is coming
today.
down.
It just seems to be the trend.
It's gone blurry. So, are we done with me? Do you need me to stay up? Or?
No, I think we're good. Thank you, Commissioner Herron. We'll go to Commissioner Kidd.
This is Commissioner Kidd. So if we decide to move forward with that text that we were just reviewing during the meeting, I would like to have a move to see that text placed within the job description. Can we approve that as is, or do we have to hold off until the next meeting in order to vote on that language?
That is a good question. Based on my understanding and my chat with ADOA earlier, we can share what we have with ADOA. They can review it and we can submit it for their approval. But I'll let ADOA answer your question, Commissioner Kidd. George, Brian?
Thank you, Chair Senko. So if you submit the draft, we can drop it into the format and get the approval for the position description, which will then flow to the posting, right? It'll reflect accurately in the posting.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Kidd. Okay. And I only have one addition, one edit to Commissioner Herron's document. Where it says sign ASL, I'd like it to say are required. So that's what I would like that to say. And otherwise, I would adopt all of that as is.
If I could interject really quickly, this is Commissioner
Yeah.
Herron. I'm not sure about the specific terminology, word for word, that's following what that says, but I would send that to ADOA in the spirit of this statement, and then they can work on specific wordsmithing and picking the right words and making sure that that aligns with the ADOA guidelines, etc. I'm a corporate girl, so I do speak corporate, and I know there's government language is a bit different, so.
All right. Does that work for you, George and Brian? Yeah. Okay. So, Commissioner Herron, can you email me your draft and I will forward it off to George and Brian at ADOA?
Kyla already did, actually.
Oh, Kyla already did. Thank you, Kyla. You're making my job so much easier. Appreciate it. I would like to recognize Commissioner Bolmarsich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Commissioner Bomarsich. I do have one question. Under skills, it says fluent in ASL. And I don't have a problem with that, but the statute used the term skilled. Are we allowed to deviate from the statute in that language? Elise, where are you?
I'm sorry, I'm having some trouble turning my video on and off. Could you repeat that? I was a little busy trying to get my video to work.
in Commissioner Herron's revisions, it says fluent in ASL, but the statutory terminology was skilled. Should we stick to the language that's used in the statute?
Yes, we should always stick to the statute, but so, you know, if that's, but Commissioner Herron also did indicate that it was being sent, you know, in the spirit, not exact terminology. So I'll defer to and trust ADOA to stick to that. But yes, it would end up reflecting the statute.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. All right. That sounds good. Okay, we are at 5:04 p.m. Let me open the agenda. I had closed it earlier. And we've talked about the job posting. We've talked about the executive director position description. So I think it would be a good time in our meeting to move on to the next agenda item, which is the ED search timeline. Brian, you had mentioned that the target, I would say, fulfillment date is December 8th, give or take. Is that correct?
That was just a suggested for, yes, a suggestion. I mean, we can go faster, but depending on how things go, and we were just trying to put a date in there to give you guys to start from there and work backwards on that timeline. The timeline document, excuse me.
Okay, great. Okay, and now that Kyla has forwarded over the proposed language for the position description from Commissioner Herron, obviously you'll do your review and modify things. When do you think that posting will go live?
Depending on when we get everything approved, like we'll we'll add the verbiage, get it approved. George, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that would be it. That's all we need is to get our cost and comp approval, and then we could just work on building out a posting. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And if the AG could help me out on here, do we need to vote on the final document, final draft, or are we moving forward once we have the draft, then we're ready to go to press, if you will? If that's the case, then we can make the edits, get the PD updated, have the posting draft ready, and be posting within I'd say a week. By this time next week, be ready to post. But if we have to meet again, then that's all dependent on this group meeting again.
That is a very good question. I have been assuming the former, but that's a really good point. Michelle, have you dealt with this before?
So here's what I would say. I think it's really kind of up to the commission to make this decision. So I think what I would probably do is I would probably make a motion today if the group, I mean, you already kind of have some interest in having this language adopted. But it seems like, you know, there maybe, I don't know if there's other members on the call today that also want to take a look at it, take some time to edit it, make changes. You know, kind of depends on whether or not you want to build in that time.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I would say that would be a decision to make if more people want to send in their input, or if the group is comfortable with the input that Commissioner Herron has done. So I would say that I agree with Michelle should probably be the vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Kidd, why don't you go ahead?
This is Commissioner Kidd. So I don't want to push our timeline even further out. So I'm thinking of, let's see, can we do something like making a motion to approve the posting or the PD? We already took care of that. The actual posting. Can we get that approved with the understanding that Chair Cinco will see that first before it gets sent out, like with our authority to have her review that before it gets posted? Can we do something like that? I'm seeing a lot of head nods. Okay, I see head nods. All right, so I would move that we approve the current description with Commissioner Herron's revisions, and it be submitted to ADOA, making their adjustments as needed, and have that sent over to Chairperson Cinco and have that posted possibly by next week, whenever ADOA is able to do so.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? Commissioner Bolmarsich seconds the motion. Whew. Okay. Do we have anyone voting in opposition? Anyone abstaining? Seeing none, hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you. I do want to remind everyone that next Friday is it a state holiday? Yeah, state holiday. So it would be a great idea to have that reviewed prior to July 3rd. Okay, Commissioner Kidd.
Yeah, so that aside, let's move on to the next portion. The search timeline. We do have that timeline here. I'd like to add one adjustment to that if possible, basically open for discussion. Let's see here. I'm wondering if we could have a few of us, maybe a subcommittee, be involved in the phone screening or that screening process for ASL specifically. Because I remember regarding our last discussion about ASLPI, that really not being a good idea possibly, but have one of us involved in the call in that screening just to make sure that this person does have the skill with ASL. And I'm wondering about ADOA's perspective on that proposal.
I will turn it over to George or Brian for that, but I do recognize that we have a hand up from Commissioner Bolmarsich. We'll go to her.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Commissioner Bolmarsich. This is really a clarifying question. When we say phone screening, we don't actually mean the telephone, do we? Because that generally does not go well for deaf or hard of hearing candidates.
I guess
So
video
it's-
phone, maybe?
Out
Okay.
of curiosity, could we say a screening via Zoom? I don't know, I feel kind of weird proposing that language, but let's go to George and Brian first, see what they have to say from the HR perspective. And
Sure.
then we'll go to Commissioner Herron for more comments.
Thank you, Chair Senko. So kind of back to phone screens being a general term. However, to accomplish that initial screening, sometimes it's screening questions purely written. Sometimes they are a phone call. Sometimes there might be a quick Zoom. So whatever's best suited to our candidate pool, that's the method that we would approach. This is an attempt to maybe screen out some of those candidates and be able to submit to the committee, the commission, the top level of candidates. You know, let us do some of that legwork to get that done. So that's the tool, the mechanism to get there. We would rely on you as far as your expertise on what's most appropriate for the candidate pool. Right.
If I could, Commissioner Herron, I'm just worried about having the actual word phone in the ad. I think that's not a good sign.
Understood. We would change that to a screening method, right?
This
Okay.
is Commissioner Herron, if I can jump in. So initial screening could be a very appropriate term that we could use. And
Yeah, I
we
like
would
that.
have two representatives perhaps from the search committee doing that screening just for a free conversation, just to test their comprehension of the language use. It wouldn't be a screening for their presentation skills or any other aspect, just the language use. I think like looking at like the appropriate directionality of signs. Do they know how to use classifiers? Do they know how to use these particular features of the language that are necessary? We should do that with deaf or hearing candidates of any hearing status to ensure that their signing level is fluent enough.
And this is Commissioner Kidd. I agree. We just want to make sure that, you know, it'll just be something short, a short conversation, no questions, no official questions, just a conversational situation.
Yeah, so this is Commissioner Herron. We should still have some questions, like for example, you know, I don't know, I'm using my old job as an example. It was a sales position, so I might say, can you describe describe your house? What does your house look
Exactly.
like? And then they would talk about it, and then would do something with classifiers that would lend itself to using classifiers, and then to my ability to assess whether their use of classifiers is clear and whether they're an acceptable candidate.
So with that idea in mind, can ADOA assist with that? Are we able to do that for the screening part of this process? Can they accommodate that?
I'll look to you, George, Brian.
Thank you, Chair Sanko.
Beforehand, I just want to clarify that the screening process is not on the agenda, just the timeline for it. So we can stick to the timeline as opposed to the substance, and that substance can be on a later agenda, because that's just, as much as I understand it's important, it's just not on the agenda, and for open meeting law, we need to stick to the agenda.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Kidd. From my understanding, we are discussing the timeline, correct? And it is in the metrics of the timeline. So that's why I brought that up.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair. I'll leave it to Chair Sanko.
Yeah,
I just wanted to bring that up, that I
sheet.
think we're towing the line a little bit, but I'll leave that to you, Chair.
Okay.
Commissioner Kidd, you did bring up a good point, because a screening was mentioned in our timeline spreadsheet that we have. And I don't want to go down the rabbit hole here on the specifics of what a phone screening should entail, but I think it's important to mention that the phrasing should be changed. I agree with Commissioner Herron. I like her idea of an initial screening, using that verbiage. And then we need to think of a target date of when that screening will be done. So we're going into July here pretty soon, so maybe the initial screening could take place in August. And the specifics and the details, I feel like, should be a conversation that we have at our next board meeting. Does that sound fair and agreeable to everyone?
I'm fine with that. This is Commissioner Kidd.
Okay. George, Brian, do you think that will be appropriate?
Yes,
Go ahead, George.
Chair, oops. Chair, Chair Senko, thank you very much. Yes, I think the method, we can definitely change the verbiage, make sure that we're using the appropriate method. You know, we don't want to stretch out this process. We want to be accurate, move quickly, and find the right candidates. If multiple meetings need to take place just to screen a candidate pool, that's when we start losing candidates. So I just want the commission to be aware of that. We want to move quickly, and we don't want to stretch it to December 5th if we don't have to. Right, but we want to find the right candidate.
Absolutely. Commissioner Herron? And before I turn the floor over to you, I just want to remind everyone that we have 10 minutes left in tonight's meeting. Commissioner Herron?
Yes, I'd like to go back to the topic of the initial screening interview. So I was wondering if we just don't do that part, if we start with our first round of interviews, no interpreter involved, and have them sign for this interview. We'll see if the candidate is able to receptively understand the language, and they also will be signing their answers as well. And we'll know at that point that they would fail that part of the interview, and we wouldn't even need a pre-screening.
That's fair. Is that something that we could do? George, would you be okay with us eliminating that initial screening, moving everyone to that first round of interviews and assessing skills there?
Sure, Chair Senko, yes, I think it's a great idea. I think you could put in the job posting, you could say, are you willing to, if selected for a first round interview, it will be conducted in ASL, you know, or something. Maybe, you know, we can think about the method, but I love that idea that it expedites it. Some screening questions in the posting and then jump into it. I don't see an issue with it unless the AGs have any feedback on that. I don't think so.
I don't have any concerns.
Nor would I.
Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you. I do want to recognize Commissioner Bolmarsich. Why don't you go ahead?
May I ask how captioning will be provided? I mean, if the interview is entirely in ASL, or some segment of the interview is entirely in ASL, how is the captioning going to work?
From the ADOA perspective, we still would have to figure out the method. I think in theory, it's a good plan. I don't have an answer for you right now. I think we'd have to find the plan.
Commissioner Herron?
This is Commissioner Herron. I think we would have to do like a quiet description, or not actually broadcasting the sound, only broadcasting it to particular people. We would have to utilize tech to figure something out.
I'm sorry, I really cannot be behind this plan until I know that all hearing problems have been accommodated appropriately.
Absolutely.
I would urge that we think of a solution before we charge ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Now, Commissioner Herron, I know that you and I both have our thinking caps on here. And to be fair, Commissioner Bomarsic, you brought up an extremely valid point. We can't just exclude a certain population from this. So, how can we identify an individual's level of expressive and receptive sign language skills? Let me think.
This is
Commissioner Herron?
Commissioner Herron. Yes, I think we need to think more on that.
Yeah.
I think we can find a way to assess their abilities to communicate in sign language, but you're right, it is not fair to the commissioners who are interviewing on that first round. So I think that we need to go back then to our original screening process as discussed.
Yeah, we might have to. Um, I see that Commissioner Kidd has his hand up. We'll go to him and then we'll go to you, Brian. Commissioner Kidd?
I'm going to hold my comment. Brian, why don't you go first?
Yes, go ahead, Brian.
Okay, I would go back to that. If we're going to do that first round of interview, you're going to have your standard, let's say we have 10 questions, right? We go through those questions. We're doing an interview video, Zoom like this, or Google Meets, whatever. And then maybe those last two questions are ASL or something like that. You kind of format it that way. So they're going through a normal first round interview. Then you've got your ASL specific questions, maybe at the end or at the beginning. However, I mean, you can do that either way, right? But that's that. Maybe I'm just thinking out loud, but that was part of it. And then the people that can a part of that panel will be able to understand. We have people that are fluent in ASL and understand that and can communicate that way with that particular person. Yes, somebody might not, but they'll have those other 8 questions that they can address their concerns on. That was just my thought. Just thought I'd bring that up.
Yeah, I have to admit that is a very creative approach to this problem. I am curious to hear what Commissioner Herron has to say.
Okay, creative, yes, I do agree. But I don't feel that 2 questions are really enough to get the sense of their ASL skills. It really needs to be a conversation. It needs to be conversational signs that they're using. We need to be able to engage back and forth in conversation and not have just some basic signs, them just responding with simple answers. We need to see more than that. So, yeah, I think it really needs to be separate to be able to evaluate those conversational ASL skills.
Okay, before we go to Commissioner Kidd, I just want to remind everyone that we have 3 minutes left in tonight's meeting. We'll go to Commissioner Kidd and then we'll start to wrap things up.
Yes, I do believe that we need to have that initial screening, at least in a one-on-one or two-on-one. Maybe not the entire committee. It could be just a one-on-one short conversation in the moment. I heard someone say we have to wait for the entire committee to have a pre-screening. I think we could have a select representative. It could be one of us, it could be an ACDHH staff, someone to verify that the individual has conversational American Sign Language skills. And then we'll do it at that point rather than doing it in the first round of interviews.
Okay, Brian, what are your thoughts?
No, that's perfectly fine. I was just going to say you could also do that first round and then maybe either before it's like a 2-part interview. Maybe the first half hour is a conversation in ASL. Then we have the selection committee. They go through their interview questions or put it on the back end. Either way, right? You're putting that, or you could do it ahead, like she said too. We could, as long as we get that initial, we're going to get applications in the first month or however long we have it posted for, right? The first month, then we send you applications. You get it down to, let's say we have 10 candidates that we want to do first round. So then you're going to do that area where you bring in, you have maybe the ASL conversation with those 10. And then we can narrow it down from there. So we could do it either way. You could do it all in the one or 2 steps. That's all.
Great. Thank you. Once ADOA has made those adjustments to the position description, I will receive that. I will review it, give it the thumbs up. Then it will be posted. We have up to 30 days to accept applications and to screen individuals to a smaller pool. We really should get started on next steps. What I'm hearing from the commissioners is that they're a bit unsure on what the next steps are. Is the next step an initial screening? If so, what does that look like? Or do individuals go directly to the first round? And if so, what does that look like? That would require that longer ASL conversation, or excuse me, that more intense conversation. And we are at time for tonight. I think we covered the most important things that we needed to cover tonight. We've reviewed and agreed on the position description. And so I say we start with that. I will review it to ensure that it's in alignment with what the commissioners were hoping for, and then we can post it. But I do think we should probably schedule another special board meeting where we can talk about where we go from here. Do we start with an initial screening, or do we send candidates directly to the first round of interviews? We need to talk about and determine what that will look like. And we want to make sure that we are accommodating all the candidates who apply. What I will do is I will work with Kyla to determine everyone's availability, as we have done for all of these special board meetings. I would like everyone to meet sometime after the holidays, preferably within 2 weeks' time. Like George was saying, we don't want our timeline to stretch out any further. We want to recruit a good, strong pool of candidates, and at our next meeting, we can talk about next steps. Commissioner Kidd?
This is Commissioner Kidd. So are we moving forward with posting the position as soon as possible, correct?
Yeah, that's what I was saying just a few minutes ago. Kyla has sent over Commissioner Herron's draft with suggested language. ADOA is going to make those revisions, send them to me. Once I give them the green light, then they will post the job description.
Excellent, excellent. Yes, as soon as possible. Thank you.
Okay. Any final thoughts, comments, or questions before I entertain a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
We have a motion from Commissioner Kidd to adjourn tonight's meeting. Do we have a second? We have a second from Commissioner Swenson. Anyone opposed or abstain? Speak now or forever hold your peace. All right, we will adjourn tonight's meeting at 5:33 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Happy Friday
Thank
Eve.
you.
Have a great
Take care.
weekend. Bye.